The Colosseum, in the heart of Rome. The most spectacular stadium of the ancients. Built for bloody contests. A true legend.
For the audience, it was the perfect spectacle. The architecture was perfectly adopted for the fights.
But what happens when this legend meets a modern-day icon?
Even today, the Colosseum ranks with any modern stadium. Any architect will be inspired by it.
The Colosseum faces Wembley. A gigantic arena, and nothing less than the most expensive football stadium ever built.
Wembley is the icon of modern stadium architecture.
A contest of superlatives, 2 opponents, 3 categories, and lots of surprises. Architecture. Which stadium revolutionized architecture worldwide? Experience. Which stadium gives fans the greater experience? And events. Which has the most stunning spectacles? We are about to find out in Legends versus Modern Icons. Rome. It was a gigantic metropolis already 2,000 years ago, and capital of an empire, the like of which the world had never seen before.
The Romans thought themselves superior to the rest of the world in every aspect, in culture, in warfare, and in architecture.
At its height, the Roman Empire spanned 3 continents, from present-day Morocco to the Ukraine, and from Jordan to Scotland. And at its center, the Colosseum. The largest amphitheater ever built in the world. 156 meters wide, 188 meters in length, and a towering 48 meters high, once the city's tallest building. Capable of accommodating more than 50,000 spectators across 5 tiers. Built in less than 10 years, with no machinery or cranes, it had one primary purpose: to give Rome's residents a spectacle the likes of which had never been seen before.
The Colosseum was more than twice the size of anything that existed before, and the people of Rome loved it.
But can the legendary arena really compete with an icon of modern times? London, capital of England and the football world. Home to a stadium that is unique in the world. Since its opening in 2007, it has been seen as the cathedral of football.
Wembley is owned by the English Football Association. This is the first football association in the world. It's actually where modern football was born.
The world's most expensive football stadium is simply gigantic. A true colossus. 300 meters wide and 315 meters in length. Wembley, with its arch, is around 3 times higher than the Roman legend. And just like the Colosseum, Wembley has set a world record. It provides covered seating for 90,000 football fans. More than any other stadium in the world.
Up until today, no one can say which of the 2 is the greater architectural achievement.
The legendary Colosseum of Rome versus the iconic Wembley Stadium. The contest begins with the first main category: architecture. Which arena revolutionized architecture? The first striking aspect of the Roman Colosseum is that it is still standing. After hundreds of years, the crowds cheered on the gladiators here. After earthquakes, fires, and lightning strikes. How is that possible?
The simple fact that the Colosseum is still standing shows that the Romans had a unique understanding of architecture and building materials. This is incredible.
The secret of Roman architecture is concealed within a material that we associate more with the 20th century: concrete. In other words, liquid stone.
It was concrete that made this kind of construction possible. They never could have built to this great height with stone alone, but with concrete, they could build higher and lighter.
The Romans had developed an ingenious building material which fell into oblivion in the Middle Ages. We practically had to reinvent it. Today, around 2,000 years later, concrete has become the world's most important building material. And after water, it is the world's most used substance. We have combined it with steel and glass to create architectural wonders of the 21st century. Its potential is virtually unlimited. From skyscrapers, motorways, and underground garages, through to the iconic Wembley Stadium, which was built using 23,000 tons of steel, lots of glass, and most importantly, 215,000 tons of concrete. But is our contemporary concrete as durable as the Romans? Will Wembley, like the Colosseum, still be around in 2,000 years?
Everyone always believes that concrete is incredibly strong and lasts forever, but that is simply not true. The concrete we use today won't last that long.
Combining steel and concrete today enables spectacular buildings and stadiums to be created. But in the long run, such combinations are doomed. When the steel rusts, it means But this isn't the only reason why the Colosseum will almost certainly outlive Wembley. The fact is, Roman concrete has for 2,000 years defied heat, cold, and moisture, and barely has a crack. Architecture created for eternity.
We know that the Romans must have been using some secret ingredient. It's something that we don't find in concrete today. There's something special going on here.
The Roman secret ingredient originates from one of the most feared forces of nature within the Earth's globe: volcanic ash. When mixing concrete, the ash helps to create a special crystalline structure, aluminum tubermarite. This crystal makes Roman concrete the most durable material in the world. The wonder material, known as pozzolana, is named after the city of Pozzuoli, 150 kilometers south of Rome, the site of the supervolcano that gave the Romans this decisive advantage. It is the largest volcano in Europe, and the region around it is known as the Phlegraean Fields.
Nature is full of wonders, and even if people think volcanoes are a threat, there are blessings for architecture and the preservation of buildings.
Even water, one of concrete's insidious toxins, presents no problem for the Roman wonder material, whether for aqueducts, sewer systems, or port facilities. Pozzolana enabled Rome to literally become the eternal city. And its Colosseum to this day is a testament to the Romans' architectural prowess, to spectacles as fascinating as they were gruesome, and to the greatness of the Roman emperors. Wembley, by contrast, is a child of its time. It's hard to imagine it standing for more than 100 years. Crowds will then stream into an even more spectacular temple. and the players will be on a pitch that will outdo the current version in every respect. Wembley may be a modern icon, but it has a finite lifespan. Verdict? Roman concrete revolutionized architecture. Its durability is far superior to ours today and to the concrete at Wembley. But who knows? Perhaps the next Wembley will stand for just as long as the Colosseum. Because
what Romans did back then is not the past. Especially in times of climate change, this is also the future.
what few people know, the concrete we use today is a major energy consumer and climate killer. Almost 3 billion tons of CO2 are produced annually in its manufacture. Twice as much CO2 as from global air traffic. The Roman recipe involves less CO2 and is therefore more durable and more climate friendly. Round 2 in the category architecture. Building the Colosseum was certainly the most spectacular construction project of the time. But can its design compete with that of a modern super arena? The first stone Roman amphitheaters were built in the 1st century after Christ. In the capital, the emperor himself gave the order. It was to be the most spectacular of all. The arenas of the Roman Empire are oval in design, but none came even close to the Colosseum's size. It provided seating for up to 55,000 spectators, almost twice as many as any other amphitheater of the time.
It must have seemed a wonder. No one had ever seen a building that big.
The world's largest building of the time was created for the most impressive and brutal spectacles of all. Gladiator contests became the most popular leisure time activity for the Romans. The crowds were huge. But how did the Romans manage to build such a gigantic structure? The secret was a revolutionary architectural innovation: the arch. The Colosseum has 240 in its outer ring. The arches extend inwards to form vaulted passages. The mother of all stadiums is basically nothing more than arches. Without them, the Colosseum would collapse under its own weight. The reason? These building materials, such as stone or concrete, cannot withstand tensile loads. In arches, the weight's pressure is directed outwards into the columns. Tensile loads then become compressive loads. The main element in the arch is the keystone, the final piece to be placed. It does not carry any weight itself, but distributes the loads and keeps all the other stones in position.
In the end, the entire Roman architecture is based on this brilliant distribution of loads within their structures.
It was perhaps the Romans' greatest architectural achievement. The arch is ideal for bearing huge weights, enabling longer aqueducts and bridges to be built. And also gigantic buildings, such as the Pantheon, achieved by further developing the arch into a dome. This was an invention that was to become so ubiquitous in the next 2 millennia that we now hardly notice it. Arches can be found everywhere, from Washington, USA, all the way to Moscow, Russia. But by the 20th century, the construction methods of stadiums changed, such as for the Michigan Stadium in 1927. The Colosseum ceased to be the largest sports facility, and the era of arches was over.
Using steel made it possible to build buildings bigger than the Colosseum for the first time. The reason is that steel can withstand tensile stresses. It's much more efficient than an arch.
And yet the idea of the arch lives on at Wembley, although in a very different way. The icon's key design feature is its roof arch. With a stunning 1-kilometer circumference, Wembley provides weatherproof seating for 90,000 spectators. Unlike the Colosseum, and due to the steel skeleton construction, size was not the main design challenge, but rather the arched roof, the likes of which the world had never seen before.
Back in the day, the Colosseum really outshone everything because it was the largest and grandest stadium. Today, we have so many stadiums of a grand scale. So you need other things. You need to apply other things, new construction techniques, to make them really stand out. And this really applies to Wembley because of its historic past.
The old Wembley Stadium, with its legendary twin towers. The hearts of English football fans will forever be linked to this stadium after England won its one and only World Cup there. After it was demolished, a design was needed that outshone everything that had gone before. But the arch, the symbol of the new stadium, presented unique challenges to its builders. 21 meters long, 100 tons of parts, assembled at the construction site. 5 computer-controlled strand jacks hold the arch millimeter by millimeter into position. The arch's purpose was to make the new Wembley Stadium an icon and to support the gigantic roof.
No one had ever built anything like this before in a stadium. The bow has to hold, via steel cables, the enormous weight of the roof, as well as its own weight, 1,750 tons, flying freely through the air.
The arch, the roof, and a total of 6 kilometers of steel cables form a highly complex, complete system. The weight of the roof puts extreme tension on the cables, thus strengthening the arch. This, in turn, can bear the 7,000-ton roof. And the highlight of the construction is the series of sliding panels making the roof movable. The arch is now part of the world's largest roof construction, making Wembley a landmark visible for miles around, an unmistakable icon of modern times. Verdict. Both types of arch are architectural strokes of genius in their own ways. Whether Wembley's architecture will make history remains to be seen. The final round on architecture concerns construction times. One thing needs mentioning from the outset. The Romans succeeded in doing something that almost all construction projects fail at today. To build the largest building in ancient Rome, several 100,000 tons of material were needed, and tens of thousands of workers. To ensure that everything runs smoothly on this mammoth construction site, a procedure was used that is more familiar to our own times: mass production. Repetitive forms meant workers could work quickly, efficiently, and above all, relatively independent.
Standardization and mass production. These principles may have appeared as new achievements in the 20th century, but the truth is that the Romans were already working like this 2,000 years ago.
Thanks to this method, the Colosseum's engineers could use a huge army of unskilled workers. In the quarries near Tivoli alone, tens of thousands were deployed. The Roman Empire needed as many slaves as possible, and how it got them was brutal. In the year 70 AD, just as the construction of the Colosseum begins, the Romans put down an uprising in Judea. They conquered Jerusalem and took with them 30,000 prisoners of war. When taking the temple, they also seized a massive treasure: money, tens of thousands of slaves, mass production, and a construction plan that was ingenious in every detail. All this enabled the Romans to build the Colosseum in less than 10 years.
For the time and the available resources, this was incredibly short.
These days, hardly a major project goes by without both construction times and costs rocketing. The Sydney Opera House. Construction took 10 years longer than planned. The Elbphilharmonie in Germany. Over 10 times more expensive than estimated. And Berlin Airport, opened 9 years later than planned. Was Wembley an exception? No, it wasn't. The plan was to build it within 3 years. But then the problems emerged, resulting in delays and rocketing costs. But why did problems occur? As with the Colosseum, the stadium is mainly made up of standardized elements. But such an approach was not possible for the complex roof construction. The design also underwent changes during the construction phase. An athletics track had originally been planned, but then aborted halfway through.
In the end, all the parties involved blamed each other for delays and the explosion of costs. The reality is there are many factors that led to complications in the construction process.
These include design flaws and delivery problems. With the delays, costs rocketed to 1.2 billion euros, 3 times the original estimate. To this day, Wembley remains one of the 20 most expensive buildings in the world. The first friendlies took place 1 year later than first planned. Wembley's construction time of just under 4 years does mean it was more than twice as fast as the Colosseum's. But in comparison, it was chaotic and expensive. The verdict in the category architecture. The legend set standards for its time. It thrilled the world. Wembley, on the other hand, had its struggles. Time for the second category, the spectator experience. Which stadium gives its fans a spectacular experience? This includes getting the crowds to their places as safely and smoothly as possible.
The Romans were great masters at stage managing huge public events. The handling of 50,000 people in the Colosseum is legendary.
The Colosseum had 76 numbered entrances. Each ticket stated the entrance through which the holder was to enter. 4 circumferential corridors and 72 staircases gave spectators direct routes to their seats. The 76 openings, known as vomitoria, led into the spectator area. At the Colosseum, this was divided into 5 zones. Everyone was then able to quickly and effortlessly find their seat.
The system of crowd management in the Colosseum was truly magnificent and characterizes all modern stadiums today.
The importance of efficient spectator management especially becomes apparent when crowds all want to exit a stadium at the same time. Many historians claim the Colosseum could be emptied in just 15 minutes. Such clever crowd management, security, and the fact that the Colosseum provided mainly seating made visiting it very safe. Modern football stadiums have not always shown themselves to be as safe as the Colosseum.
Stadiums in the 20th century, with their large areas of standing spectators and lack of escape routes, have unfortunately turned out to be quite dangerous.
The Heysel Stadium in Brussels. In 1985, Liverpool FC supporters attacked a block occupied by Juventus fans, who panicked and attempted to escape. 39 people died. 454 were injured. Just 4 years later, the number of Liverpool FC supporters crowding into Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield exceeded capacity. Fences around the pitch and between the blocks prevented people escaping the crush, and 96 people died. This is one reason why Wembley Stadium has no fences and not a single standing space. Anyone entering here sits down. This requires 90,000 spectators, some rival fans, being guided safely to their seats. A huge challenge. As in the Colosseum, Wembley needs plenty of security to keep crowds under control. Crowd control today is aided by technology. Surveillance cameras help monitor what happens inside and outside the stadium. But the key question is, how fast can fans get in and out?
The system of many numbered entrances, stairways and corridors at Wembley today is still very similar to the one of the Colosseum.
Wembley Stadium has a total of 14 entrances at 2 levels. The stadium interior is divided into 148 blocks, each with its own entrance. In an emergency, it takes just 12 minutes to get every spectator out. This is incredible, considering Wembley seats 90,000 people, almost twice as many as the Colosseum. Verdict: the modern icon is extremely safe, also because its spectator management is similar to the clever Roman method of 2,000 years ago. Another comparison. Which spectators had a better view of the spectacle? Prime time at the Colosseum. The stars of the entertainment take the stage. The crowds want one thing above all: to see for themselves who triumphs in the fight for life or death.
Basically, the view depends upon the distance to the arena or whether your view is obscured by obstacles such as roof supports.
The Colosseum's roof was made up of a massive awning, stretched out by around 1,000 soldiers and fixed by a network of ropes, giving spectators a clear view. Viewing distance could also hardly be bettered. The stands directly border the arena. The closely packed rows of seating behind were just 73 centimeters apart. It meant spectators were as close as possible to the spectacle. Then there's the gradient. The steeper the stands, the lower the risk of the person in front blocking the view, and the shorter the distance to the arena. With a 31-degree gradient, the stands were almost as steep as in most modern stadiums. The maximum viewing distance to the arena was just 55 meters.
That's impressive. And what's more, the tickets were free. Now, of course, you couldn't sit exactly anywhere you wanted to. Where you sat depended upon your social status.
The worst views were from the top tier and were occupied by women from the lowest class and slaves. The best views were enjoyed by senators, the nobility, and the clergy. It wasn't just about watching the contests, but also the emperor. With no TV, he could show himself off to his assembled people here. But even the spectators in the worst seats had an extremely good view due to the amphitheater shape. This is still almost identical in modern stadiums, whether at the Parc des Princes in Paris, the Aztec Stadium in Mexico City, the First National Bank Stadium in Johannesburg, or at London's iconic Wembley. All have the same basic oval shape, encircled by rising tiers for spectators. What the Romans created 2,000 years ago still applies today.
With the elliptical design, visibility is much better for more people than with the round or angular shape because you don't have any blind spots. Even modern architects find inspiration in the Romans.
And just like back then, the best seats at Wembley Stadium border the pitch. But can fans in the highest tiers also see the fouls and stray passes with their own eyes? Wembley's size means it has a decisive disadvantage here. At 83 meters, the distance from the field of play is significantly greater for the worst seats. The gradient of 34 degrees is a little steeper than in Rome and approaches the maximum before spectators start feeling dizzy. The luxury of 80 centimeters of legroom also means the distance from the pitch increases from row to row. Greater comfort, but also a greater distance from the pitch. But every one of the 90,000 seats gets an unobstructed view due to the support-free roof construction. Incredible for a stadium and a roof of this size. And made possible by the ingenious arch design, which bears a large part of the roof's weight. Technology also compensates for the greater distances to the pitch. 2 video screens, each the size of 600 home TVs, means spectators won't miss a thing, even from the cheap seats. Speaking of cheap, unlike in Rome, Wembley fans get the seat they pay for. Verdict? Based on stadium size, the views at Wembley are phenomenal, but they are equally good in the ancient Colosseum. But it isn't just perfect views to the pitch that make a stadium. At least as important are perfect acoustics. Noise in the Colosseum was deafening. The densely packed tiers and the emotional spectacle really got fans in the mood. The atmosphere was certainly comparable to the terraces of today's stadiums. Acoustics in the Colosseum contributed significantly to creating the Lion's Den atmosphere.
It was already clear to the architects of the Colosseum that the form, gradient, and material used would have an impact on the acoustics and the environment.
The enclosed oval construction generated echoes, which amplified the cheering of the crowds. The steepening gradient of the tiers created a parabolic bowl. The awning, too, contributed to trapping the atmosphere inside. Particularly hard materials, such as stone, also increase echo effects and generate higher volumes. And the rule here is simply that more volume equals more emotion. In the legend, acoustic quality was not so important. At Wembley, the starting point was a little more complicated. A diverse range of events takes place here, all requiring different acoustics. A modern stadium also needs to give maximum comfort to every spectator.
The enlarged legroom is more comfortable for the spectators, but the noise level suffers as a result, and it's difficult to match the atmosphere of the old stadium.
The former Wembley Stadium was world famous for its unique Wembley Roar acoustics. This was created by the stadium's large surfaces, such as the roof, where sound could bounce off and become amplified. Sound recordings of 2 finals matches in the old stadium would become the benchmark for the new stadium's designers. They built the lowest tier with more rows than usual to increase noise levels on the pitch. A glass wall between the top row of seats and the roof prevents sound from escaping. At the same time, echo hotspots needed to be prevented. Large glass surfaces, such as in the VIP boxes, were therefore offset. They break up the sound, and echoes are directed only to the areas directly in front of the box. This ingenious method is intended to improve acoustics at music events, because Wembley is both a football and concert venue. Excessive echoing would therefore be a problem.
The Wembley designers wanted to prevent some seats from receiving echoes from all directions, and that's why they arranged the glass surfaces at an angle of 5 degrees to each other.
The source of inspiration was the stealth aircraft. Its angled surfaces reflect radar energy in different directions. And here, the same was to happen with sound energy. And it has done so successfully. Wembley's acoustics are amazingly good. But the Romans also knew 2,000 years ago how to create fantastic sound. The verdict of Category 2. When it comes to fan experience, the ancient legend can actually compete with the icon of modern times. Category 3. Which stadium holds the most stunning spectacles? A bloodthirsty program awaited visitors to the Colosseum. The crowds were hooked on it. Elaborate naval battles were the highlight. These naumachia were not only spectacular, but also required a colossal effort. It meant nothing less than flooding the arena. To reach a water level of 1.5 meters required 4 million liters of water. Replicas of boats from famous battles were up to 15 meters long. On board were gladiators, costumed as warring parties in the staged battles. The warriors dueled from ship to ship. How the engineers of the Colosseum achieved it is still not fully understood today. A match day then didn't last 90 minutes like a game of football, but ran from morning to night. The day began with man versus animal. The emperor used exotic animals to show that he ruled the entire ancient world. The next item on the program followed at noon: executions. And finally, in the evening, the highlight: the gladiator fights. Crucial to the smooth running of the event were the labyrinth of passageways below the arena.
Below the arena, there was a complicated system of rooms, elevators, and supply shafts through which animals, stage sets, and fighters were pulled up into the arena as if by magic.
The stage system has still not been fully researched. Most of the fixtures have long disappeared due to the wood rotting away. But grooves, recesses, and holes in the stone indicate that lifts were used to transport animals from the underground levels directly into the arena.
The entertainment program was exceedingly complex, and no expense was spared for the audience.
Such technical innovations also made the Colosseum legendary. In its first year after opening, there were 90 days of events in a row, always in front of a full house. Wembley is quite different, with only around 30 major events a year, with visitors totaling around 2 million. Football is the arena's main attraction, with Wembley also being home to the English national team. There have been 50 music events since its opening in 2007. Boxing, rugby, and football events have also taken place. Lots of variety that requires lots of state-of-the-art technology. Video walls cover an area totaling 195 square meters. 408 spotlights illuminate the pitch. The iconic arch shines in millions of different color combinations, using 228 LED spotlights. Technical equipment at Wembley is definitely state-of-the-art. But despite all the happenings there, the stadium still lacks something: legendary events that put the technology to the test.
The Colosseum was spectacular. Old Wembley was legendary, but with a new stadium, fans are still waiting for something the world will never forget.
such as Live Aid, the biggest concert in rock history. Held at the former Wembley Stadium. Verdict: the new Wembley Stadium, despite all its technology, still lacks magical moments. The Colosseum, however, has already made history with its monumental naval battles. But what about possibly the most important ingredient to create mass euphoria? Stars. Gladiators often achieved star status. They became well-known, were celebrated by the people, and could apparently even become a threat to some emperors. The glamour surrounding gladiators at the time was so great that even emperors such as Commodus entered the arena to fight.
Gladiators were the sports stars of antiquities, the celebrities. They achieved fame, glory, money. Monuments were erected to them. And of course, many women fell in love with them.
The majority of gladiators were former prisoners of war. The contests in the arena were their only way to freedom, wealth, fame. Their training was highly professionalized. A tunnel connected the Colosseum with the largest of Rome's 4 gladiatorial schools, 100 meters long and 60 meters wide. This is where the fighters lived and were cared for, well-nourished, massaged, and subjected to constant training. Its arena was surrounded by 8 rows of seats and could accommodate 3,000 spectators, offering a popular pastime to the Romans. Normally, gladiators competed against each other, using different equipment whose advantages and disadvantages offset each other. The most popular gladiator was Retiarius. He fought with a trident and net. The different gladiator types even had their own fan groups. Some bet money on their heroes. Gladiator blood was even considered a cure for a variety of diseases. The Colosseum made stars out of prisoners. Unlike Wembley, no stars are made here. Whoever performs here is already a star. And when they stand in the arena, they are not fighting for their lives, but to be the best footballers in the world. One other thing that differentiates the stars of modern times from their role models of antiquity: now, no one fights alone.
Football is different to gladiators. With football, it's the team that's the star rather than the single player.
Wembley is a venue for finals. Stars from the winning team climb the 107 steps to the royal box to receive their trophy from members of the British royal family, a tradition that was already established in the former Wembley Stadium. This is where the stars of Wembley Stadium prepare for their big moments. The changing rooms have already undergone a complete redesign since the opening to a futuristic design. Waiting for the stars are the world's possibly most fanatical fans.
England is probably the most football-crazy country in the world. Fans are actually called supporters here, which is how they see their role, like actively taking part in the game.
Despite ticket prices ranging from 45 to 180 euros, Wembley sells 78% of seats. Verdict: a large arena needs stars. And there are stars today, just as there were 2,000 years ago. But they differed because, back then, they did not always make it out alive. But what about the physical well-being of the spectators? Were they as well provided for in the Colosseum as in a modern arena? Historians suspect that the senators were served by slaves. Commoners, on the other hand, purchased from traders in the aisles.
They sold salt snacks and vinegar water. In addition, there were about 100 drinking fountains for the spectators. High-ranking guests were given free wine.
And what about when all these refreshments meant that spectators needed to answer the call of nature? The Colosseum, like all public buildings in Rome, was already connected to sewers at the time. 4 of them ran underneath the arena, collecting waste and feeding it into a main pipe. No one knows today exactly where the toilets were in the Colosseum. It is assumed that there was a gutter on the 3rd floor for normal spectators, and marble benches for senators. Compared to today, this seems Spartan. Wembley Stadium provides much more comfort for its visitors, and even adds a few superlatives. Often a source of annoyance in older stadiums, the halftime interval is hardly sufficient to buy a beer and the obligatory stadium sausage. Not so in Wembley.
Cynics say that Wembley is actually just a mall with a football field.
Wembley boasts 688 snack stands and 6 restaurants. 98 kitchens prepare food. And during the halftime interval, 40,000 drinks can be served. And for those not fond of hot dogs and fish and chips, Wembley is home to London's largest fine dining restaurants. And queues for the toilets are a thing of the past at Wembley. There are 2,618 toilets, more than in any other stadium. At least in our last round, Wembley is clearly ahead. No evidence of vinegar water or a lack of toilets, as there was in the Colosseum. The final category verdict. Events that took place in the legend have found their way into the history books. Wembley, on the other hand, still lacks those magical moments, but its spectators are well looked after. 2,000 years lie between the high-tech stadium at Wembley, the icon of the 21st century, and the legendary Colosseum, the mother of all sports arenas. But in matters such as design, building materials, and crowd management, much of the miraculous building in Rome still looks surprisingly modern today.